All right. Well, good morning, and thanks for joining us as we update you on a cold case investigation. So, on August 10th in 1992, our deputies responded to North Forsyth Road, where they found 53-year-old John Stagner deceased. He had head and facial trauma. So at the time, our detectives did suspect a friend of his named Ronald Cates. He would frequently borrow money and tools from Mr. Stagner, but we didn't have enough probable cause at that time to make an arrest. So we created the cold case team in 2020, and detectives started looking at this case again. And today, actually 30 years to the day, Ronald Cates is in jail in North Carolina, and we have charged him with this homicide. And he's being charged with first-degree homicide. So these cases are extremely important to us. We want our community to know that just because the case is a year old or 5 years old or 30 years old doesn't mean we stop investigating the case. And so we know that and we remember that every homicide victim leaves behind family and loved ones and friends, and that has an absence in their life because of these tragic crimes. So I'm so very proud of our cold case team. Since we started the cold case team in 2020, they have solved 13 cases dating way back to 1984. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Corporal Dave Nutting, who's going to talk about our cold case team some more.
Thank you, Sheriff. My name is Corporal David Nutting. I'm the supervisor of our cold case team, which is made up of myself and 3 detectives. Combined experience between all 4 of us is about 90 years of law enforcement experience, and the majority of that is in our criminal investigation division. So we've solved numerous cases over the past couple of years that our cold case team has come on board, and I want to highlight a couple of the cases in addition to this 1992 case with murder of John Stagner. The 1996 case, the stabbing death of Terrence Paquette. Kenneth Stow is currently in the Orange County Jail awaiting a trial. That case was solved by the use of forensic genetic genealogy. We have a 2007 home invasion murder of Felix Paguada. Cameron Denard was arrested earlier this month. He was in prison, and that case was solved through the use of fingerprint technology. Another case, we have the 2015 murder of Delroy Baker, who was murdered in a home invasion. Case was solved through DNA work and cell phone analysis and extensive interviews. And that case was recently adjudicated. The suspect in that case, Lewis Farmer, was found guilty by jury and sentenced to life in prison. Additionally, we have the 1997 murder of Donna Byrd, who was found deceased inside of her residence, and that case was solved through fingerprint technology as well. So that just highlights some of the cases that we're working on. That we have worked on, that we've solved. In addition, some of the other duties that we have over 20 unidentified human remains in our jurisdiction. We've secured funding through a variety of resources to test all of these remains through a forensic genetic genealogy. So it's going to be a long process. However, we're confident that we will be able to identify all of these remains, and that will give us a jump start on murder investigations. And 12 of those victims are murder victims. And part of our process in cold case is to meet quarterly with our forensics unit to make sure that we've identified cases that are have forensic work that needs to be done to brought up to modern day standards. And currently we're reviewing over 40 cases on a quarterly basis. And everybody wants to know how many cases we have. We have just over 500 cases dating back to 1941 with the murder of an Apopka police officer. And of course we investigate long-term missing presumed dead cases, which we have a number of those as well. So between myself and the 3 detectives, you see we stay quite busy. We work very hard, and these cases are quite challenging. Quite frankly, if they were easy to solve, they would have been solved initially. So we take a lot of pride in the work that we do and the results that we get. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Detective Kevin Wilson, and he's going to talk about the 1992 investigation.
Thank you. Morning. So I'd like to give you a little bit of the facts and timelines of this 1992 case. The detectives did an amazing job, original detectives of this case, laying the groundwork and interviewing family members. John Stagner was a very hardworking man that worked for Orange County. He was a maintenance worker that actually lived on the Orange County maintenance property. On the early morning of August 10th of 1992, about 5 in the morning, his wife went in to wake him up, and he was cold to the touch and deceased with head trauma. Detectives responded out, spoke to the wife, spoke to her mother, and processed the crime scene. At the time, they knew, based off interviews with family members, that there was a good friend, Ronald Cates, of the family that borrowed several power tools, other items from Mr. Stagner, because he was a very giving man. And Mr. Cates actually at the time had quite a drug habit, and he would not return these power tools back. He would actually pawn them for his own money to purchase drugs. And Mr. Stagner confronted him about it and said that he needed to, kind of basically return his tools back. So at the time, when detectives started kind of investigating this, they went to the Cates home. One of the daughters was visibly shaking, got home at home and said that he wasn't at home. Later on, the detectives learned that Mr. Cates actually hid under the house that day, asked his daughter to lie for him and say he wasn't home. So obviously the detectives at the time wanted to interview him. They interviewed him that later on that day on the 11th. They interviewed him on the 18th as well. And there were a lot of inconsistent statements between his timeline and what his family members were saying as well. So the case kept going a little bit. And then in 1995, there was a suicidal incident with Mr. Cates, where he claimed and made admissions that he did kill Johnny Stagner. He said it several times in front of his family members. But at the time, with evidence and technology the way it was back then, there was not enough to charge the case and arrest Mr. Cates at that time. So in 2020, actually, a family member of the Cates family contacted the sheriff's office and got this ball rolling again. And several detectives started looking more into the John Stagner case, spoke to family members, daughters, the wife of Mr. Cates as well, and kept it going more or less, because the family really cared about this case, even if they were the suspect's family, because Mr. Stagner was very, very good to the Cates family. He would give them money at the time when they needed it, or a place to stay. So in March of 2022, I actually took over the case, conferred and checked in with the other detectives. We ended up making extensive interviews with these family members, and the family members felt like they could come out and tell a little bit more of their story, because they were in fear of Mr. Cates their whole lives, because he was very abusive to them, and they were in fear of him. And in April 2022, he actually confessed to Salisbury Police Department in the hospital up there. He was in there for basically a Baker Act, but in North Carolina, and he asked to speak to someone, speak to a nurse, and a nurse heard him say that he killed someone in Florida in 1992. So she summoned the help of a security guard at that hospital, actually. And the security guard listened to what Mr. Cates had to say, and they did some research on our Orange County Sheriff's Office website, and realized that it was actually a John Stagner 1992 cold case. And they summoned Salisbury PD to come in in North Carolina, and 2 patrol officers on body cam obtained probably about a 10 or 12 minute confession about this murder. And then from then on that point, there was enough evidence at that point to be able to go up and interview Mr. Cates again, charge him with our homicide here in Florida. He is currently at the Rowan County Jail in North Carolina, and he's pending extradition. So if there's any other questions about the case.
Have you been able to reach any members of the Stagner family and tell them that the case has been resolved, and what was their response?
Yes, sir. They're very excited, I would say. Obviously, over time, members of the Stagner family have passed on, but there are, say, a sister of his as well in Kentucky, actually a niece in Kentucky, and then that niece's daughter. They're still currently in touch with me a lot about like what's going to happen from here on out.
Do they think that the case maybe would never be solved?
At the point, I don't really know about that. From 1995 until about 2020, obviously the detectives laid a good groundwork on the case. I don't know what type of correspondence they were having back with the Orange County Sheriff's Office at the time, but they did hold out hope and feel like that hopefully, you know, there would be some type of closure.
So they had a lot of religion.
Yes, sir.
You considered at the time in '95 when he made this, like doing a suicidal episode, he made a confession, but there wasn't enough physical evidence. It kind of sounds like now in 2022, you're still basing the arrest on a confession. Has other forensic evidence helped to solidify the case on that end?
We've tried several portions of forensics evidence, and actually this type of case is not a, it's more on the timeline, the statements of where Mr. Cates could have been at the time when this murder happened. There are very detailed statements that his family, actually Mr. Cates' family, has made that totally puts him in play, more or less, that he could have done this this murder.
How rare is it to have the family of the suspect be such a key role in the investigation? That's unusual.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual as far as what we've seen, that the Cates family went above and beyond to be able to assist us, give us a great deal of background for even the Stagner family as well as their father or their husband. So.
In his confession, did he say why he did this?
He did not. He just explained more or less that he hit Johnny with a stick. The family also knew that he also carried a walking stick a lot, being that he would walk around a lot. We actually, over a 30-year period, you know, when the crime scene was processed, there was a stick, very, very similar looking. We asked the family to describe the stick as well. Again, the way they described it, we were able to send a photograph to the family of the Cates family, and they identified that as the stick actually that he would normally walk around. And this stick was found in the crime scene.
You have that.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what he's in jail for and what kind
It's for our arrest warrant. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Everybody good? All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.